police pulled me off the bridge in Derry. They put me in the hospital, and I remember it was the Christmas of 2009. It was Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and the day after I was in Ward 2 in Alta Galvin on a clinical detox. And you would think that would be enough to make you sort your life out a wee bit. They told me I could phone my parents to come and get me. I made the phone call outside whilst walking to the off licence, which was round the corner, and I drank a half bottle and came back up and sat in the hospital bed after detoxing in the hospital. It was just a mess. And that went on for a period of time. And then I bumped into some people, and the opportunity to come into a treatment centre in Armagh came up. And I was tired, I was burnt out. I was exhausted. Now I was in my late 20s. I was exhausted. My body was broken. My mind was a mess. And I thought, right, I'll go and I'll give it a go. And that was the start of the recovery process from then. And that was 2009 into 2010. So that Christmas, that period in time was really difficult. You know, because again, like I have no coping mechanisms, remember? Like, I don't know, I couldn't deal with a fart in a car. Like, I literally couldn't cope with anything. And then all of a sudden I'm dealing with marriage breakdown, divorce, nowhere to live, finances, no job, all that stuff. So it was a really difficult time. But I think that was the catalyst. That was a catalyst. I think I realised it was like this is not good. Like you're nearly 30. Who's going to want you? You're broken. You've got all the shit that you've just brought with you. Something has to change.
Yeah. I suppose your sort of way you described it there was, you know, bumping into a group of people, and the Lifeline kind of came and sort of, I think it was, kind of glanced over that there in terms of like, I think for people listening, like looking back at, you know, what you've been through, that was a lifeline of after a series of pretty severe blunders. So like I suppose that was it then, in terms of, because you've obviously said you've been to that rehabilitation side before, and it was kind of like as soon as you could get out and get back at it again was your approach to it, whereas this time was different, because I think it was, everybody could have turned around and said you have a problem, but I think you actually admitting it to yourself and going, I'm tired of this, was...
I think I was at the stage where I was just burnt out. Like I was a husk or a bit of a shell. You know, I was just, and I didn't know myself. I didn't know anything anymore. And you know, I think about the people that were around me life at that stage. There was my best friend, a guy called Tim Shields. He's I would talk about. Tim's a runner, and Tim's also in recovery. He's also a pastor. He's many things like. But I remember my mum used to phone him, go and come and talk to Gary, go and come and help him out. And he hated me at that stage, like, and he'd adamantly say, like, I didn't even like you at that stage, because we used to fight the bit out. And he ended up being the best man at my wedding. You know, that turned around. But I had people like Tim who, you know what, who kind of saw something, you know, had people around me that, and it's funny. So for years I had this perception people saw me as a problematic person. And it wasn't until, you know, people started to see me as a person with a problem that made it a little bit different. So how people spoke to me, you know, don't get me wrong, people gave me a kick in the arse when I needed it, but, you know, people kind of understood that I had stuff to navigate through. And I went up to Armagh and I spent 3 months in a residential treatment centre. No TV, no radio, no access to the outside world. Must have power hosed for about 2 months amongst therapy and all that sort of stuff, but had a good chance to really have a think about the destruction and all that stuff. You know, not only the stuff that happened to me, but also the shit that I caused other people. Like, you know, and that's the thing about addiction, you know, like I caused hurt to so many people and pain to so many people. And there's people I can apologise to, and there's people I can't. And I have to find my ways to navigate that. But I knew something had to change. So I did my time. So I spent 3 months there. And then I actually relapsed on and off for about 2 years around that time. So, see, recovery, I believe recovery is not a linear process. I don't think you just get sorted, get sober, and that's you. I think relapse is part of the process. It's part of the process if you learn something from it. Yeah. You know, and for me, you know, eventually the relapses got shorter, and then there got more distance between them, and then eventually they stopped.
Still progress there.
But there was a lot of learning, so that the work started to be done after that. But again, that was due to the people that were around me and the things that I was involved in.
Yeah. Because that's one of the things that we discussed last night. We're talking about, like, wanted to speak about the whole going into rehab and stuff. Like a lot of time you hear people going into rehab, they don't go in once, they go back again and again, they maybe sign themselves out of it and stuff like that there. But from someone looking from the outside, you're thinking, oh, that's not working for them. Like, so would you say the opposite, that it is sort of working for them, but it's just over time, it takes longer?
So everybody is different,
yeah.
you know, and it goes back to consequences. So I could never say, you know, you could never say, treatment's not going to work for you. You could never say that because you just don't know. You know, you don't know what you could take. And it's really funny because all it takes is one person, they say one thing that you relate to that changes a little bit of your thinking, that makes you change your decision making.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say. I do think now if you're going into residential treatment, you have to want to do it.
Yeah.
If you're being brought there by your spouse, by your parents, by your partner, or whatever that is, if they're taking you and telling you you have to do it, that's a very different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Because you have to get to that point yourself. And that's what's so frustrating whenever we work with families. They're like, why can't they just do the thing? We put everything in place. Because they haven't recognised that it's the issue now that they need to change. And that's hard. And that's why it's complex and it's complicated. And there's a lot of different factors. But I think how much opportunity we give people, I think people, especially with addiction, it's really helpful and healthy to be around other people who struggle with addiction, who are in a good place. Because that peer support, that understanding, that empathy and compassion is really important. And you'll find most residential centres are run by people who have had issues themselves.
Yeah.
Which is really good, as well as clinicians, don't get me wrong. So I suppose the ARC stuff was all about how can we use our collective experience of this thing to try and help and support other people. And show them that, you know what, it doesn't have to be that way. It can be different. But also not be ignorant enough to say that it's not going to take a piece of work, like, because it's tough going, man. It's the hardest thing I've had to do. I've been through some shite, and this has been the toughest. Being sober, staying sober, getting through that process has been the toughest. Like,
you see the relapses just after your second stint in rehab.
Yeah.
Like, was there like more of a realization from yourself after that happened of like, fuck, like I really need to get back on track here? Or was it like, did you have a better support network around you? Like, what were the sort of changes when, like you're saying you had a relapse, but then you had a good stint off it and eventually you did stop? Like, what was it after the relapses that made you get back on? Like,
there was a lot of pride in that. So I had good people around me, but there's no point having good people around you if you're not prepared to talk about it. You know, that sort of thing. And again, I had felt that people had been telling me, you're doing really well. And I was like, fuck, I can't tell them that I'm not. I can't say it because now they're going to think badly, or they're going to think that I'm struggling. But it was around the time, you know, the relapse was happening, that I met my wife now, Sarah. Sarah's a therapist. And, you know, she always kind of suspected some things were going on. And I suppose her approach to that was, I get that this is happening, but this can't keep happening. So we need to bring some people in. And she did. She told me. You know, and hey, I love her for it, and obviously it was an uncomfortable conversation, but she recognised that, you know, other people had to start to come in, and then people were in my life, and people were like, you know, they always tell you that if you're struggling, you just reach out, just text and reach out. Like, you might as well be on Mars, right? Yeah. That's how much of a chance I have of texting you. I'm here drinking, like. You know, but I remember there was one guy, Brian, and Brian was like, what I want you to do every single day is text me. I don't care if it's a full stop, if it's a comma, if it's something, just start getting into the habit of texting me every day. And it worked. And I started to become a bit more articulate. I started talking a little bit more. I started talking about my feelings. God forbid I ever talked about them. Started talking about that stuff. And that's where the healing came. The healing came from the understanding, dealing with the emotions, the difficult stuff, the distorted thinking, you know, the negative thinking patterns about myself, you know, the no self-worth, self-esteem, none of that stuff. You know, that was the work that had to be done then.